Ilhan Omar's world just turned upside down. Her son faces jail time, and the courtroom drama is spiraling out of control. What really happened, and how will this impact her political future? Stay tuned, because the next few minutes reveal everything you need to know. The morning air in Washington, D.C. carried a sense of anticipation that had nothing to do with ordinary politics. At the federal courthouse downtown, lines of journalists and cameras had already formed before sunrise. Rumors were circulating across cable news networks, social media platforms, and political blogs. Ilhan Omar's son was facing serious legal consequences. What started as quiet investigations months ago had now erupted into a full-blown courtroom drama that had captured the nation's attention. Inside the courtroom, the tension was palpable. Attorneys shuffled papers, whispered in low tones, and glanced repeatedly toward the judge's bench. Spectators, including political analysts, legal experts, and members of the public, were seated shoulder to shoulder, eager to witness the proceedings firsthand. The judge entered, immediately commanding silence, signaling that the courtroom was about to witness a significant turning point. The charges against Ilhan Omar's son were rooted in allegations of financial misconduct and compliance violations tied to federal regulations. According to prosecutors, the evidence presented demonstrated a sustained pattern of questionable activity rather than an isolated mistake. Bank records, email correspondences, and internal financial reports formed the backbone of the case. Prosecutors argued that these documents collectively indicated intent and a disregard for federal oversight, raising concerns that warranted immediate judicial intervention. Defense attorneys quickly countered these claims, arguing that the accusations were overblown and that the evidence, while documented, did not conclusively prove any criminal wrongdoing. They emphasized that their client had cooperated fully with investigators and presented no flight risk. Yet, despite their arguments, the judge signaled that the charges were severe enough to merit the court's immediate attention and an urgent ruling regarding custody when the decision came down. It shocked many observers. Ilhan Omar's son was to be taken into custody immediately. Cameras flashed, capturing the reactions of those present. Legal analysts quickly explained that while pretrial detention does not imply guilt, it does reflect the court's assessment of risk factors, including the possibility of interfering with ongoing investigations or failing to appear for future proceedings. The ruling was firm, decisive, and unexpected by many in the gallery. News of the detention spread across Washington like wildfire. Within minutes, cable networks interrupted regular programming to cover the breaking development. Tweets and posts from political commentators, journalists, and ordinary citizens flooded timelines, dissecting the implications, speculating on next steps, and questioning what this would mean for Ilhan Omar's political standing. The hashtag Omar family crisis began trending within hours, underscoring the intensity of public interest. According to sources familiar with the family's internal communications, the news hit Ilhan Omar hard. Advisors and legal counsel reportedly convened immediately to formulate a response strategy, balancing the need to protect family privacy with the unavoidable reality that public scrutiny was now at its peak. Statements prepared in advance were reviewed, but no immediate comment was issued. The silence only intensified speculation and media frenzy. Observers noted the careful coordination of federal officers during the custody transfer. The courthouse had been cleared of unnecessary personnel, and agents took steps to ensure both safety and discretion. The accused was escorted without incident, and the proceedings concluded for the morning. However, this was far from the end. Legal experts highlighted that the case's ramifications could continue for weeks or months, with potential additional investigations or charges looming on the horizon. Political analysts quickly seized upon the moment, noting its significance. Opponents of Ilhan Omar called for accountability and transparency, framing the case as evidence of broader concerns about the conduct of elected officials and their families. Allies urged patience and due process, reminding the public that detention does not equate to guilt. Media coverage dissected every aspect of the story: courtroom strategy, reactions of family members, and even body language during the hearings. Meanwhile, social media amplified every development. Video clips from outside the courthouse were shared millions of times, with users analyzing every gesture and expression captured on camera. Commentators debated what the detention might mean for ongoing political discussions, especially as it related to election campaigns, party dynamics, and public trust. The story quickly became more than a legal issue. It had morphed into a political spectacle, reflecting the intersection of law, media, and public perception in a highly polarized environment. By midday, it was clear that the events of that morning would have lasting consequences. Legal teams continued to prepare for subsequent hearings, while the public followed each update closely. Analysts speculated about the next steps: motions for bail, possible appeals, and further investigations. As the courtroom emptied, the weight of the ruling hung over Washington, signaling that the legal process had entered a new, more consequential phase. The unfolding scenario demonstrated just how quickly private legal matters could transform into national political events. With Ilhan Omar's son in custody, every move by the Congresswoman and her team would now be scrutinized, and every media update would carry significant weight. The courtroom decision had not just affected one individual. It had ignited a story that would dominate headlines for weeks to come, challenging legal experts, political analysts, and the public to navigate the rapidly evolving landscape. As the courtroom emptied and the initial shock of the ruling settled, the media frenzy outside reached unprecedented levels. News vans lined the streets, reporters broadcasting live updates to audiences across the nation. The public's reaction was a mix of disbelief, outrage, and curiosity. For many, the case had moved from a legal matter into a defining political moment, one that could shape public perception of Ilhan Omar and her family for months to come. Inside the courthouse, attorneys prepared meticulously for the next series of hearings. Prosecutors reviewed evidence with renewed intensity, anticipating potential motions from the defense team. Defense attorneys, on the other hand, focused on framing the detention as precautionary rather than punitive, stressing that cooperation and transparency should mitigate concerns. Every document, email, and financial transaction was scrutinized to craft the most persuasive arguments possible. Legal strategists emphasized that the stakes were higher than ever, not just for the defendant, but for Ilhan Omar's broader political image. Meanwhile, the social media landscape continued to erupt. Video clips of the detention circulated widely, with commentators analyzing the sequence of events down to the smallest detail. Memes, infographics, and opinion threads proliferated, reinforcing the viral nature of the story. Analysts noted that the rapid dissemination of information, accurate or otherwise, was magnifying public scrutiny. Within hours, the narrative had split into multiple angles: legal procedure, political ramifications, and personal consequences for the Omar family. Political observers quickly weighed in. Opponents of Ilhan Omar framed the situation as evidence of a lack of oversight and accountability within the circles of influential political figures. Editorials suggested that the events could have long-term implications for her upcoming legislative initiatives and re-election campaigns. Meanwhile, allies cautioned against jumping to conclusions, reminding the public that due process must guide interpretation and that an isolated family matter should not dictate judgments about political competence. Yet, even this careful framing could not contain the torrent of public commentary and media coverage. Inside the legal proceedings, the judge scheduled a series of hearings to address bail, procedural challenges, and possible additional charges. Legal experts noted that each hearing could provide fresh insights into the case's complexity. The evidence presented included detailed financial records, communication logs, and expert witness testimonies. Each document was dissected, with attorneys questioning and cross-examining to highlight inconsistencies or confirm the narrative of intentional wrongdoing. The courtroom became a stage for high-stakes legal maneuvering, where strategy and presentation were as crucial as the evidence itself. The political implications were equally significant. Analysts speculated that this incident might embolden critics within Congress, particularly those who had been skeptical of Ilhan Omar's conduct and influence. Party leaders and committee chairs began privately discussing the potential fallout, evaluating how the story might affect upcoming legislative votes, public opinion polls, and broader party strategy. Media outlets interpreted these discussions as early indicators of political ripple effects, fueling the sense that the courtroom drama extended far beyond the immediate legal context. At the family level, the impact was profound. Reports indicated that Ilhan Omar's personal team was working around the clock to provide support while maintaining a careful public posture. Legal advisors emphasized the importance of measured responses to prevent misinterpretation or escalation in the media. Despite their efforts, the continuous coverage and viral dissemination made it nearly impossible to control the narrative fully. Every statement, photograph, or observed reaction became fodder for commentary, amplifying the pressure on both the family and the Congresswoman herself. The public's response extended beyond traditional media. Social media users engaged in real-time analysis, sharing commentary on video streams, discussing potential outcomes, and speculating about future developments. The hashtag Omar Family Crisis continued to trend nationally, reflecting the sustained intensity of public interest. Some segments of the audience expressed sympathy and called for due process, while others used the situation to reinforce political narratives or challenge Ilhan Omar's credibility. The viral nature of the story ensured that the courtroom events would remain in the public eye for an extended period. As the day progressed, the legal team began preparing for pretrial motions, including requests for additional evidence, challenges to procedural rulings, and strategic discussions about public messaging. Analysts highlighted that this case would likely set precedents or become a reference point for similar legal inquiries in the future. Each document, testimony, and ruling was analyzed with meticulous care, not just by legal professionals, but by media outlets, bloggers, and political commentators eager to provide comprehensive coverage. The situation underscored the broader tensions between public scrutiny and private legal matters. With Ilhan Omar's son in custody, every action by the Congresswoman, her family, and legal representatives became newsworthy. Observers noted that such high-profile cases blur the lines between personal accountability and political consequence, challenging the public to navigate complex narratives and forming opinions amid incomplete information. The courtroom's decision had unleashed a chain reaction that would influence political discourse, media coverage, and public perception simultaneously by late afternoon. The gravity of the ruling settled in across Washington and beyond. Legal analysts predicted that the coming days would involve further hearings, potential appeals, and heightened media coverage. Political experts emphasized the story's evolving nature, noting that each new development would be dissected and magnified. The combination of legal consequences, political scrutiny, and viral media attention ensured that the events surrounding Ilhan Omar's son were far from reaching a resolution. Instead, this was only the beginning of a much longer narrative, one that promised continued attention and debate in the weeks to come. The day following the shocking detention, the media storm only intensified. News outlets scrambled to provide live updates, while talk shows invited panels of legal experts and political analysts to dissect every detail. Social media feeds flooded with opinions, debates, and viral clips from the courtroom, further amplifying the story. Every public reaction by Ilhan Omar, her legal team, or political colleagues was scrutinized under a microscope. Analysts noted that the incident had transcended a mere legal matter and was now shaping the political landscape in unexpected ways. Within Congress, the situation sparked urgent discussions. Lawmakers debated how to address the unfolding controversy without appearing opportunistic. Some Democratic colleagues urged caution, reminding the public that the legal process was ongoing and that premature conclusions could backfire politically. Republican critics, however, seized the moment to question Omar's judgment and influence, framing the incident as symptomatic of broader lapses in accountability. Committee meetings included quiet exchanges about potential political fallout, as both parties attempted to anticipate how public opinion might shift in the coming weeks. Meanwhile, the courtroom continued to command attention. The judge, adhering strictly to procedural law, outlined the next steps, including the scheduling of hearings related to bail conditions, potential charges, and evidence disclosure. Legal teams on both sides meticulously reviewed testimonies, witness statements, and documentation. Every detail was subject to intense analysis. Defense attorneys argued for leniency and emphasized cooperation, while prosecutors presented the unfolding narrative as indicative of calculated misconduct. The courtroom, though physically contained, was at the epicenter of a nationwide debate on legality, accountability, and political implications outside the courthouse. Supporters and critics alike gathered. Protesters with signs advocating for due process mingled with others calling for stricter accountability. Social media mirrored this public divide, with hashtags trending simultaneously for both support and condemnation. Memes and commentary threads spread rapidly, often distilling complex legal matters into viral soundbites. Analysts cautioned that such online dynamics, while influential, often oversimplified the nuances of the case, leaving audiences with partial or skewed interpretations. The Omar family faced immense pressure. Internal communications revealed a constant balancing act, providing moral and emotional support while managing public perception. Legal advisors insisted on carefully worded statements to avoid unintentional misrepresentation. Despite these precautions, every public appearance, social media post, and press interaction was immediately scrutinized. Some observers suggested that this intense visibility could have lasting repercussions, not only for Ilhan Omar, but for her broader political credibility. Meanwhile, political pundits dissected the potential impact on upcoming legislative initiatives, with the media spotlight focused on Omar. Discussions about her policy agenda, ranging from immigration reform to community investments, were temporarily sidelined. Analysts argued that the political narrative had shifted from policy effectiveness to personal and familial accountability. While the legal proceedings would follow structured timelines, the court of public opinion operated on a faster, more volatile pace. The legal strategy also evolved. Defense attorneys began preparing for motions related to procedural errors, potential evidence suppression, and appeals against detention. Prosecutors countered by reinforcing the narrative that the court's actions were necessary to ensure compliance and accountability. Every motion, filing, and ruling became a headline, reinforcing the perception of a high-stakes drama unfolding in real time. International media, too, took notice. Outlets from Canada, Europe, and the Middle East reported on the incident, highlighting its implications for political transparency and accountability in the United States. The coverage underscored the broader narrative. High-profile legal cases involving public figures rarely remain confined to domestic attention. Analysts noted that global audiences often interpreted these events as reflections of the U.S. judicial system and political climate, amplifying the stakes for all involved. As evening approached, the public continued to monitor updates obsessively. Legal analysts produced in-depth breakdowns of courtroom procedures, while political commentators assessed potential electoral consequences. Social media engagement remained high, with discussion threads dissecting the timeline, motives, and possible next steps. Public interest showed no signs of waning, and the viral nature of the story suggested that attention would remain sustained for weeks, if not months. The unfolding situation underscored a critical tension: the intersection of legal accountability, family matters, and political perception. Ilhan Omar's role, both as a mother and a public figure, came under intense scrutiny, with every decision interpreted through multiple lenses. Legal experts emphasize that while due process must guide public interpretation, the optics of the case could have lasting implications for her political career. By the end of the day, anticipation mounted for the next scheduled hearings. Each new development, from document filings to witness testimonies, was expected to provide further insight into the case. Analysts predicted that the ongoing proceedings would continue to dominate headlines, shaping public discourse and influencing political calculations. The combination of legal consequence, media amplification, and political ramifications ensured that the narrative surrounding Ilhan Omar and her son was far from resolution. The following morning, the courtroom buzzed with anticipation. Legal teams arrived early, reviewing notes, testimonies, and evidence in preparation for what was expected to be a critical hearing. The public gallery was packed with media personnel, legal observers, and concerned citizens eager to witness the next chapter of this high-profile case. Cameras were positioned strategically, capturing every reaction and movement. News crews set up live broadcasts, ready to report any development immediately. Ilhan Omar's legal team prepared a meticulous defense strategy. They emphasized cooperation with authorities, highlighted mitigating circumstances, and framed the situation in the context of ensuring compliance with the law. Their approach was cautious, measured, and aimed at preventing further escalation. Each statement released to the press was carefully crafted to maintain credibility, mitigate political damage, and reinforce the narrative that due process was being respected. Meanwhile, prosecutors continued to highlight the seriousness of the situation. They presented arguments stressing accountability, adherence to legal procedures, and the broader implications of ignoring regulations. Witness testimonies were reviewed and cross-examined, and every legal precedent relevant to the case was analyzed in depth. The courtroom became a stage where strategy, legal expertise, and public perception intertwined, each influencing the other. Outside the courthouse, the public reaction was overwhelming. Protesters advocating for justice, transparency, and accountability gathered alongside supporters emphasizing fairness and due process. Social media platforms exploded with trending hashtags, viral clips, and commentary. Tweets dissecting courtroom interactions, video highlights of exchanges between lawyers and officials, and opinion threads spread rapidly. Analysts warned that while public engagement was high, much of the conversation was driven by emotion and speculation rather than legal fact, creating a dynamic that could shape perceptions. Before formal rulings were made, political ramifications were equally significant. Democratic leaders privately strategized on how to address the situation without alienating constituents or appearing unsympathetic. Republicans seized the moment to highlight issues of accountability and question the effectiveness of oversight. Policy discussions related to immigration, community welfare, and regulatory enforcement were temporarily overshadowed by the legal and media circus surrounding Omar and her son. Campaign strategists and political analysts agreed that the unfolding story had become a defining narrative influencing voter perception and shaping legislative agendas. The media frenzy extended internationally. Outlets from Europe, Asia, and the Middle East covered the developments extensively, emphasizing the unusual nature of a high-profile politician navigating such intense scrutiny while managing personal and family matters. Analysts noted that the story was being framed as a broader commentary on political accountability in America, with implications for the perception of governance and institutional integrity globally. Inside the courthouse, tensions were palpable. Judges, attorneys, and staff moved swiftly, adhering to procedural requirements while balancing public attention. Every argument, objection, and motion was closely monitored and reported. Analysts pointed out that the courtroom dynamics were increasingly complex as legal strategy, public relations, and political consequences converged into a high-stakes environment. Ilhan Omar faced intense pressure. Every public statement, interview, and social media post was examined for nuance, implication, and potential misstep. Advisors recommended extreme caution, knowing that any perceived error could be magnified and used against her politically. At the same time, her supporters mobilized online and offline, emphasizing the need for due process, fairness, and measured analysis. Community groups and advocacy organizations voiced their support, calling attention to legal principles and civil rights. By mid-afternoon, key hearings concluded with preliminary rulings. Legal experts began dissecting outcomes, speculating on possible appeals, and assessing how the unfolding events might influence political calculations. Observers noted that even minor procedural developments could have outsized media coverage and public perception implications. Each headline, news clip, and social media post contributed to a narrative that was evolving in real time, demonstrating the power of modern information dissemination in shaping public discourse. As evening approached, anticipation for the next steps continued to mount. Legal analysts predicted that subsequent hearings would determine the trajectory of the case, with potential ramifications extending far beyond the courtroom. Political commentators emphasized that the situation had already reshaped perceptions of accountability, transparency, and governance. Social media engagement remained high, with viral discussions, debates, and commentary threads driving sustained attention. Ultimately, the unfolding events highlighted a critical intersection of law, politics, and media. Ilhan Omar's dual role as a mother and political figure placed her under extraordinary scrutiny, with every decision, action, and statement magnified. Legal proceedings proceeded within the framework of law. Yet public attention and political calculations created a parallel narrative that could influence perception and outcomes. For months to come, the story of Ilhan Omar and her son served as a case study in modern political media dynamics, illustrating how family matters, legal proceedings, and political careers can collide in highly visible, high-stakes scenarios. Analysts concluded that the developments would remain a dominant topic of discussion, demonstrating the enduring impact of viral, legal, and political narratives in shaping public perception, discourse, and political strategy.